Just now, we witnessed the cryptocurrency market skyrocket to unprecedented heights. This was a really significant day for cryptocurrency. In addition, if I were to take a closer look at the daily improvements achieved across the board, we may notice a sea of green. In point of fact, HBR increased by 5.1%. Even while this may not seem like much, there is still a great rise across the board for a number of these utility plays, such as IOTA 5.2%, ONDO 5.5%, and XLM 3.6%. I am aware that this may not seem like much. XRP also had a large increase today. ICP is 10.4%, XRP is 2.5%, and QNT is $3.3. To reiterate, there have been some great advances overall. The fact that Bitcoin's price increased by 3.7% today is something that we are quite happy to see. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about all of these changes that have occurred recently, but this is how the market as a whole seems. The price of Bitcoin is around 109.6 thousand, the price of Ethereum is approximately 2.7 thousand, and the price of XRP is approximately 2. In terms of the total volume throughout the course of 24 hours, when it comes to XRP, the volume on XRP is a little bit lower than predicted, with Bitcoin reaching 36.3 billion, Ethereum reaching 21.6 billion, and XRP reaching 2.81 billion. However, you should be aware that for the most part we are witnessing a significant amount of purchasing in the vicinity of Bitcoin and Ethereum. You know, if we actually go to the top gainers and losers in the top 500, we could see that there are some very strong gains across the board for a lot of old coins out there. I'm going to put the spotlight on the overall market cap of cryptocurrency, which is 3.45 trillion, which is up 4.19% today alone. This is something that we are very excited to see. In the past 24 hours, there have been a number of really nice moves that have taken place. I would want to talk a little bit more about this topic since, despite the fact that we are beginning to see these moves take place, it is the month of June. From what I've seen, June is shaping up to be a really significant month for cryptocurrency. We still need to exercise caution in this situation, even though it appears to be going quite well. The Federal Open Market Committee meeting with the Fed is still 1 week away. In addition, we are hearing discussions about the China agreement, which I will also bring to your attention in this article. But before we get into it, let's really speak about Bitcoin for a moment, since it did reach a new high earlier today of $110.6 thousand. To a certain extent, XRP reached a high of about 2.31. In all, the high was around 2.32 or 0.33. Simply said, we will round it up. Then, of course, Ethereum did reach its all-time high of $2,724, which is something that we are eager to witness. What I was describing in the video that I uploaded the day before, however, was a couple stages. The current appearance of Bitcoin is as seen above. It was our hope that there would be a significant increase above 106.8 thousand. As I rounded up to 107,000, I said, the surge that we had today was enough to pull us out of the red zone. It was quite satisfying to witness this. There is just one issue that I can perceive at this point, and that is the fact that we have reached a wall, which is really at a lower altitude. We would like to see much higher highs. Since we have already been seeing lower lows, we do not want to see lower highs since we have previously seen lower lows. Given that we have not yet reclaimed the new all-time high, this indicates that the current market is technically bearish. For this reason, we are aiming to surpass that new all-time high. There is a possibility that it will take place within the next 24 hours, particularly if we do get some favorable news on the China deal. However, you should always be ready for anything. I despise it whenever we get these significant rises in Bitcoin, and the only reason for this is that Bitcoin's dominance is still at such a high level. It is currently coming in at approximately 64.5%. Consequently, I would want to see this decline on the next major move that Bitcoin will make. On the other hand, I have a sneaking suspicion that right before a much greater extension to the upside, there will most likely be a nice little sell down. In addition, this is how part of the trade that takes place on smaller time frames appears, especially on something like the 4-hour. It appears to be somewhat comparable, right? When it comes to Bitcoin, there is the 3-hour, the 2-hour, and even the 1-hour session. If you look closely, you will notice that we are coming up against a lovely little wall here. As a result, there is still a great deal more work to be done on Bitcoin before we can be said to be completely out of the water, but we are making progress. Now, with regard to XRP, it appears like the higher low is going to remain in place for the time being. Furthermore, I say this for the time being because once more, we still have to make it through the FOMC meeting. I am still of the opinion that it is going to be one of the more significant events that we are aware is going to take place in the near future, right? It is not something that is completely out of the blue. A good illustration of this would be the China deal, which might go place at any present time. Therefore, as we are getting ready for that event, there is a possibility that the price action may become more volatile. This is the reason why I said, just be cautious here. But up until this point, we have been witnessing some very significant movements. The reason that we have not yet witnessed a significant movement across the board for older coins is due to the fact that all attention are currently focused on Bitcoin, due to the fact that Bitcoin's dominance is currently at an all-time high. Nevertheless, the overall picture here and the overall level that I'm actually looking for XRP to clear and have a 3-day candle close over is about 2.55 cents. This is the level that I'm looking at. On a daily basis, you should realize that we do have a wonderful higher level here, which is somewhere about 2.65 cents. To put it another way, that is essentially the midline. A great push to clear some of these highs is something that we really want to see and hope for, that we have made in the past, such as the middle of May, for instance, and then we can go back to March, which is all the way up here, approximately almost 3,000, and then we will target the highs that we made in January. Again, there is a great deal more work to be done for XRP, but I believe that we will eventually get at our destination, particularly as we begin to see the alt season really kick off. For the record, I am still of the opinion that the alternative season will take place, and let's really speak a little bit about it, because we are beginning to see some pretty significant indicators and signals that point to that becoming the case. Okay, when it comes to XRP, the most important factor that I was discussing earlier was XRP's supremacy, is that correct? We were so focused on dominance around ancient coins, but now we are concentrating on Bitcoin's dominance because it is still at big highs. This is because Bitcoin is still at massive highs. And am I correct in saying that I did look at the 3-week? The topic of discussion was the 3-week period. We were discussing the most important level of interest there, which is the one that we are now at, right? Only a few inches below it. I am keeping a close eye on the potential level of 66.74%, which is the level that I am keeping an eye on. There is room for improvement in this regard. We may even reach 67%. However, the most important thing that I am truly keeping an eye out for about this situation is a major impulsive move away from these highs. In any case, the most important thing is Ethereum. What Ethereum is currently doing. It appears that everyone has forgotten that Ethereum is the virtual currency that is in charge of practically every single cycle. When it comes to Ethereum, the current transaction price is about $2,000, which is equivalent to over $700. There is a tiny indication that we are beginning to clear this high on the 3-day. To put it simply, this is how the daily looks. It seems like there is a lot of opposition here, right? It is imperative that we exercise extreme caution with regard to this range, since it is precisely in this region that Ethereum encounters a significant amount of resistance. Therefore, we are in the red zone at this point. Nevertheless, up to this point we have been cutting and we have been ranging on this chart, which is precisely what I have been saying over the course of the past couple of days, which is that, we are sort of replicating the same pattern down here before that massive impulsive move really took place. In addition, this increased from around 1,800 to over 2,800. Consequently, when we consider that from where we are at the moment, I have a strong suspicion that we will break through to over $4,000. In point of fact, I would not write off the possibility of us retesting some of these highs up here at around, I would say $300-400 to almost 3,600. I would not rule out the possibility. Additionally, we have the potential to achieve far greater heights on Ethereum. On the other hand, it appears that we are experiencing some powerful impulses and movements here on Ethereum at precisely the same time as the exchange-traded funds ETFs that are centered around Ethereum ETFs are beginning to experience large inflows. In point of fact, we have over here optimistic US spot Ethereum ETFs that have already witnessed inflows for 15 trading days in a row, with the total amount exceeding $837 million. This is quite exciting to see, since for the past several weeks we have been highly pessimistic on Ethereum. This is something that we have been doing for quite some time. You may be thinking, well Nick, I thought this was an XRP video. This is a true statement, in fact it is. However, as I mentioned earlier, Ethereum is often the one that takes the wheel throughout each and every cycle, which is referred to as the second phase of alt season. The next thing that happens is that we start to see huge caps really leading the way, which is XRP. In light of this, I am currently concentrating a great deal of my attention on what Ethereum will accomplish in the future. If we begin to see Ethereum truly break out,